With regard to rubbish collection, there is a problem, and let's not walk away from that. So, at some stage or other, we will have to consider the best way in which we can increase the amount that we recycle. But bear in mind one thing. Domestic households produce 10% of the waste in this country. No effort is being made to get into commercial and the business arena, which produces 90%. Now, where are you going to get the most efficiency in terms of recycling? Landfill is a problem. There is a monetary cost if we don't increase our recycling issues. Well, I do think we have to go down the incineration route. The question is, where do we put it? And more importantly, do we put it in a place where you are approaching it by narrow roads, narrow lanes, unsuitable for heavy traffic at any time? And this is the question. There are other areas with easy access of motorways which doesn't have big articulated lorries going down narrow roads, quite unsuitable. But bear in mind, incinerators are not the big problem that people are saying they are. Those of us who have been to incineration plants in Europe have seen what they're like today. They're very modern, they're clean, and they're not wholly intrusive.
I think recycling is important. We have to recycle to protect the environment, but we have to take the people along with us. And there's a strong feeling amongst residents that weekly collection is the best way to go, and that's where the Labour Party would like us to go. Well, the problem people always raise, and when I was a councillor, I got angry telephone calls about the waste hanging around in the bin, weevils and insects and the like around the house. They don't like it. They don't appreciate having the waste hanging around. They're used to weekly collections after all. Anything that can be recycled ultimately should be recycled, and that's our policy on it. I can't see the problem with incinerators. They're being used internationally, they're being used in this country. I can't see that there's a problem. The safety aspects have been improving all the time, and I don't see ultimately there's a problem with a degree of incineration. Of course you can't have incinerators in the back garden, but ultimately I can't see a problem with incinerators.
There is no actual policy on whether it should be weekly or fortnightly. It depends on the circumstances and what the residents are willing to pay for, whether or not going fortnightly is going to increase your recycling. And if you're going to try and do that, then you need to get your recycling sorted out first before you go weekly. At the moment we are totally behind the current weekly collection because there is just no way that the current recycling arrangements could reduce household wastes to a level where fortnightly would be practical. More has to be invested by the government in recycling facilities. Now I don't mean bottle banks and things like that. I mean you actually have to encourage companies to use recycled material to produce goods, because unless you've got a market to sell your plastics to, then it's just going to stay in a warehouse or go into a hole in the ground. We do not believe that there is a need for incinerators at the moment. Not against them per se. We just don't believe that if we can get the recycling sorted, take the plastics out, then there is little need for incinerators.
In places like Germany, the recycling rate is twice what it is here in Surrey. So that's one step we can go. We can actually do the waste reduction, waste reuse, waste recycle, which is what the government's priorities are supposed to be. And we can follow places like Norwich, which have gone down the route of anaerobic digestion, where you control and get methane directly from the waste, rather than burn it or bury it in a landfill. So that means we wouldn't need an incinerator to be built at Capel, and we wouldn't need one to be built in Virginia Water either. At the moment in Surrey, what gets recycled varies tremendously from borough to borough. Some boroughs already recycle pretty much everything from the doorstep, some don't. There's no real tally between which party is in power and what is done. What we should do is follow the example of somewhere like North Somerset, where the disposal authority, the county, and the collection authority, the borough, work together, and by working together they achieve a lot more.
There's a great deal of recycling going on. We're entirely and completely in favour of the recycling. We must encourage that, and I think most people in the communities want to encourage that. We are worried, though, of the way in which the weekly collections of general rubbish have been falling away. Fortunately, in the borough where our candidates are standing, that is Reigate and Banstead, they still do have a weekly collection, and we want it to continue, but it shows up that the fact that that borough has a weekly collection and so many other boroughs in Surrey merely have a fortnightly collection. Once the collection of rubbish breaks down, you have all sorts of problems that follow from that. Well, the disadvantage, of course, is rubbish lying around and being encouraging vermin, etc., and generally lowering standards, resulting in litter falling around. Now, it may be not so difficult for people who live in large properties to keep the rubbish in the bin, but a lot of properties, and where you have blocks of flats, you have a lot of properties close together, and keeping the rubbish in the bins is sometimes a great difficulty, and it leads to general deterioration of standards all round, from which everybody suffers. There are a lot of drawbacks to incinerators, particularly from health aspects. We wouldn't be very keen on having incinerators in our area. If they've got to take place anywhere, it should take place well away from centres of population, certainly not in a crowded area like Surrey.
We want weekly rubbish collection. We think, actually, when I go around the village where I am, I can see not only that fortnightly rubbish collection would be a disaster, maggots, rats and so on, but also that even the attempt to recycle, for instance, baked bean cans, you've got people with baked bean tins lying outside their houses for a whole week. It's actually quite a mucky process. UKIP is pro-recycling. Incineration is an obsolete technology. It is going to be harmful. Incinerators require constant feeding, so we may have to import rubbish to keep them going. If you don't keep them going, they don't work properly. There are going to be masses of trucks on the road. We think it's obsolete technology, and we prefer landfill. We are very good at landfill, and anyone who says there aren't any landfill sites left is quite clearly adjusting the truth to suit an agenda. You see, the EU has told us we've got to have a tax on landfill. So it suits some politicians to invent reasons why landfill is a bad thing. And one of the things they invent is that we haven't got any land left, and that's absolute rubbish. We've got thousands of square miles or thousands of acres of land left and lots of holes to fill. So it's just rubbish.